What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today is indeed the first day of Season 8 here at Motorfest, and with that, we are now going to have 4 new summits. And before you say anything, probably the biggest surprising part to me is all 3 of these tires, I believe, are new. So we finally have 3 new vanity items in the summits, man. It only took 2 years to see that. That is definitely amazing. At least I think all of these are new. I'm pretty sure I do not recognize these, especially that one. That's definitely new. We'll also have the standout tire here. So there is going to be a good amount of cool stuff there, at least for the vanity items of the platinum rewards. The gold, silver, and bronze are kind of just mid, so I'm sure people are going to go after the lovely platinum stuff. Also, the final summit here, guys. No guts, no glory. Look at that BMW M4. Believe that is a CS because it kind of says it in the front over there. But look at that thing. Definitely looking pretty dope. And I'm going to say right now, this car is probably on this side of insanity when it comes to the summit. Am I right? I mean, we all do know everyone will end up tryharding for that thing. But besides all of that, looking at the summit, and before you guys do say anything, by the way, pretty much every event in this summit is new. All the events are from the new playlist. So that is probably something you'll have to get used to because it will have the new type of event in there. And personally, I have been a big fan of these type of events as something like Burnout Paradise or Burnout in general. We also had that in Midnight Club. So I do love those type of events. But besides all of that, we'll also have ourselves 2 long jumps at the bottom. Before you guys say anything, these are insanely easy to do. I do know some players are struggling. And look, here's the thing. I do understand some of these long jumps might actually look hard, guys. But the funniest part about them is all you will need is a half score breaker. You can also run a half chemist if you want. I did notice that will help with flying off the jump and getting a farther distance. But around 800 and something yards, 157,000 points. I literally started on this, drove straight, hit my nitrous, jumped off, guys, got a maxed out score. So these are very easy. For the speed trap, though, I didn't do anything crazy on this one. I do know if you exploit and you find a jump somewhere, you can fly into it doing like 200 something miles an hour. But yeah, I kind of just started off, turned around, and did 198, like a normal person on the road instead of trying to find a jump. I just didn't feel like dealing with all that in there. Now, moving over to the events, though, when it does come to these, I would say people are probably going to have an interesting time on these. The first one here is a vehicle loan, guys. You will have to use the BMW M3, which, of course, is the new vehicle in the game there, if you were wondering. It is a car a lot of people definitely wanted. You also can't customize this until you do the entire playlist, which I'm sure people will notice that. But either way, though, this race is also on the side of interesting because this one doesn't have the big pink things coming out of the ground. But it definitely has a lot of jumps and some weird routes and stuff, so definitely keep an eye on that. It can get pretty dang confusing in some places, but luckily it's not too terrible. Speaking of the long pink things coming out of the ground, the next event, the free lunch, this one will have those guys, so you will have to find the correct route. Personally, I've always been such a big fan of these races. I love them back in Midnight Club. I love them in Burnout Paradise. Like, yo, here's the objective. Literally go find it. You can find the best routes. Some routes might be better than others and stuff like that where you could shave off seconds. And that's probably the biggest thing with these. I feel like people might have to practice on them, which is the same thing for Racing for Freedom, guys. This is also along the lines of that. You will notice there will be shortcuts and different things you will definitely want to take in these events. That will give you the highest chance of getting a better score in it. For the top, I guess you could say top right. Top right. Before this event, though, it will be a circuit event, and it will be 2 laps, so you pretty much don't have anything crazy going on. Like, you don't have to find the entire route like you do with many of the other events. To be honest, this race was fairly straightforward. Mind you guys, the only thing I used in the entire summit was a chemist set. I did not use pro settings or anything on the M3. This car is pretty dang solid for a tier 1. For the final 2 events here, these will also follow the same route as free lunch. So keep in mind you will have to find the pink thing coming out of the ground and stuff like that on these, which I would say players will probably run the race a few times and go, oh yeah, I should probably go right there. I shouldn't go left here, and maybe I can cut through that way. So they're really not too bad. It's kind of like finding the fastest route. And after a little while, you should be good to go on these events, basically finding the best routes to get you there even quicker. I also want to announce a few things. Stay tuned for a few car reviews I will definitely be doing in the coming days. On top of that, I will do a playlist review, also a playlist challenge guide, with the goal of that going up on Friday, then probably a car review on Thursday, aka tomorrow, and then another review of a vehicle on Saturday, and then I'll have a few topic-based videos talking about some of the bugs, which I do think this season caught a good amount of those and issues that players have definitely been experiencing. But besides all of that though, if you guys have any questions, do let me know in the comments below for this summit. And also do let me know your initial thoughts on this entire season. I would say the biggest highlight so far for basically everybody seems to be the customization.